This is a huge treat. I have been geeking out for the last hour with Ken Deagle. This is his world, and he's giving us a glimpse into what actually happened behind the scenes and really what it takes to run these things. You did trackside support with these engines, so
correct.
What would that entail?
So each one of these cars had a unique driver, Richie Hearn being one of them, and they need very specific reactions from the car. You tune the boost control system, the fueling, the shifting, everything to the driver. So that's the way IndyCar was from when I started in 1992 all the way up to the end of it in 2008. It's driver optimization. You sit with the driver and you start looking at very specific elements of the data set, like how's your boost, how's your engine speed, how's your temperature, how's your fuel pressure, oil pressure, making sure the health of the engine's right, and then tune it as needed to optimize it for the best lap times.
That's so weird. No, so something Ken showed me, they used a fuel injector to control fuel pressure, and I guess you'd be able to explain that better than I would.
We found back in the day that when you lean a Cosworth engine out, trying to get your optimum burn rate usually kills a lot of horsepower. And by accident, we found on the dyno we had a bad fuel pressure regulator, and we were trying to run lean settings, and all of a sudden the numbers looked really good. We thought there's something hiding here. So we corrected it and then designed this fuel system. This puts pressure on the backside of the diaphragm to essentially cancel it out, the spring pressure. The 50 horsepower we were giving up by leaning it out, we found 35 or 40 of it. And all of a sudden we're running 10%, 15%, 20% lean, and it's not slowing down.
Driving the fuel pump, maintaining whatever 90 psi takes horsepower.
Yep.
And so by reducing pressure, you were able to...
Well, it wasn't really a power gain from parasitic losses.
Oh, okay.
The engine responded better with the lower fuel pressure on lower settings.
Wow, okay.
So
oh, wow.
It was just, a lucky find.
Yeah.
And we incorporated it into all the engines we built until the end of Champ Car.
I don't have any experience with is the idea of working within regulations. Are there certain regulations where you're like, man, they just let us do this?
We experimented with a lot of stuff. How do you make more power if your displacement is one thing and your fuel burn rate is another thing? Rev the shit out of it.
Wow, okay.
That's where we started to really make power with these things. Now the limiting factor on RPM for this is right here. It will sling a chain if you really, really rev it hard. The irony that I learned since my whole career was there was the gains we made in 2002, 2003 when we were open competition could have been applied to 1992, and we could have been 150 horsepower up on the competition. But it's the old saying, you don't know what you don't know. This engine was pretty well developed and became very reliable and very fast.
And you were saying earlier that this is realistically at race trim 850 horsepower?
850 to 875.
I don't know the inches of mercury to PSI conversion. 7 pounds of boost. Yeah, 7 pounds of boost, that's it.
Yeah. And then on the very end, when we were revving the XF, we were running 4 PSI.
I have been working out 5 times a week versus the traditional 2 times a week that I was before, the weekend warrior type. And while that has considerably improved my health and performance, that is a lot of work. AG1 is something that takes almost no effort to consume, and the benefits are plentiful. Not only have they upgraded it to the next gen, but I have been begging them to send me this, and I am very excited for AGZ. It has 2 of the most important types of magnesium for me, both glycinate and threonate. The thing that I was so curious about is actually all the stuff in the very small fine print. And within there, one of my personal favorites is tart cherry. This is a list of supplements that I've bought all separately, that I'm getting more complete sleep, I feel better, and these are things that properly support sleep. AG1 has their best offer ever. Go to drinkag1.com/RobDahm or click on the QR code, you get the welcome kit. You also get, to be like me, and a morning person hat, as well as your 1-year supply of vitamin D3 and K2, and flavor samplers that not only include all of these, which by the way, my favorite is berry, but also the new AGZ, the sleep supplement, which I know will be a game changer for my nightly routine. That is over $126 in free gifts for new subscribers. Thanks to AG1 for sponsoring this video. What was sort of power band were you expecting?
Well, in race trim, common sense would tell you to put the engine at max RPM at the point of lifting for the first turn. But the reality is, to make these things really work, you have to focus on your engine speed coming off the turn. The power is pretty peaky, from about 8,000 RPM to 13 or 14,000 RPM. So if you drop 2 or 3,000 RPM on the bottom, you're losing a ton of power. So what I would do when I qualify these is I would put them into the rev limiter about 100 feet before the start-finish line. So it'll still do 220 miles an hour even with a rev limiter on. But if it comes off that turn with 50 to 75 more horsepower than the other guys, guess what?
That's cool.
For racing, you had to run the engines lean. So I was Jack Villeneuve's engineer in 1995 when he won the Indy 500, and he came from 2 laps down. He got a penalty for passing the pace car under a yellow. He said they were flagging him, so he passed him, and then we realized the mistake, and they docked us 2 laps. So we leaned the thing out, and he was running qualifying times like the last 50 laps. It was all, how you take the tools you have and apply them as most equitable and effective on race day.
I did read somewhere, maybe it was XF era, kind of judging the XD. It was somebody from Cosworth saying that this was a very intense engine to drive.
In that time frame, we didn't have the funding that the Toyota teams and the Honda and the Mercedes teams had. And one of the things we didn't have at Cosworth was a transient dyno. So we only had static dynos. But a transient dyno is a lot more effective to try and develop the drivability elements. Now mind you, it's a 2.65 liter engine making 850 horsepower. You can see how short the conrods are. It's peaky. But once we got on the transient dyno in Dearborn, we identified characteristics that we could adjust out. And we did it through fueling. As I was showing you earlier on that engine with the cam assembly on the side of the plenum.
Yeah.
The barrel valve, essentially, it's not linear. It goes a little bit of air, a little bit of air, a lot of air, and it blows the tires off. We lost many races in the closing laps because we didn't have any tires left. I've seen my driver come in with cords showing on his tire. The better driver could modulate it. Michael Andretti was one that could make it work because he would just whack the throttle like this instead of trying to roll into it. So if he smacks it 10 times, still getting the same speed through the corner, but he's not igniting the tires.
Wow.
Whereas someone who's driving it like a sports car, trying to be really smooth in throttle application, bye-bye tires. The transient dyno, which will be in those maps that I'll send you, makes it a lot more predictable. This is for the throttle cams to make the asked for power equal what the driver wants.
And that is the actual degrees.
Yeah. And then we're playing with fuel mapping to get it linear. A little bit of data from Brian Herda at Laguna. So it's a 109 lap time. I think that put him on pole at the time. And these are the areas that I would play with, trying to get my mapping adjusted to the driver. Cam explanations here. I'm going to let you have this.
Oh, I appreciate that.
This is the notes from my boss at the time, just talking about how to make sure that the oil consumption are where we think it is. That's when we switch to the one-ring pistons.
Is it more advantageous for me to just stick with the one-ring piston at this point and just deal with oil consumption?
Either will work. The only time the single-ring piston really comes into play is when it's maximum competition. So this is the boost control modes. So it's a closed loop system. So it'd give you a digital figure to tell you what's going on. So when the driver pushes the pit lane speed control, on my data, I'd see 255. Or at 215, the butterflies failed. 210, motor jammed.
Oh, wow.
So it's all the strategies feedback. And then we would do a overtake RPM. We could raise the RPM for a few seconds. So these engines, I think we ran them right around 14,000 RPM. I'd have to go back and really try and find the notes that will define that. But I'd recommend you run around 12,000 RPM. The more time you get at lower RPM, the longer the engine's going to last. Also, if we run the RPMs a little bit less, we can crank the boost up. So that locks onto the cylinder head, and that's how you set your cam timing.
Okay.
So like if you want to degree your cams on like a V8, you said you never touch a piston before.
yeah.
So I'm going to give you
Yeah,
references. If you want to degree the cams, you got to find TDC, and then you choose the valve, usually cylinder number 1 you're going to do your measurements from. And you put a dial indicator on it, you try and get the same plane as the valve angle. These, we call them rabbit ears. You bolt them onto the engine, and it picks up the cams, and you don't have to do any fiddling around. Then you just record your numbers, and then you adjust your cam timing accordingly. As soon as you're done running the car, when you do, drain every bit of methanol out of it.
Okay.
Pickle the thing with gasoline. So what you do is you do an external fuel system with an electric pump and put, shell unleaded, and run it through, flush out the pump, and flush out all the injectors.
Okay.
Now, one of the things that happens on these when they sit for a long time, if they weren't properly put away, is the injector O-rings fall apart. And when they do that, again, you're done. So simple pressurization, if it leaks, it's coming apart. If it doesn't leak, maybe not coming apart. But realistically, we've got to put fresh filters in them, and we can take the injectors. Are you familiar with RC engineering? Take the injectors over there, tell them that I sent you, and they'll flow test them and make sure they're right.
Perfect.
What was funny is we ran these injectors for 3 builds, like 1,500 miles. And when we're done, put them all in a bin. Russ Collins bought every one of the used ones, rechecked them, flow tested them, put stickers on them, and sold them for $75 a piece. I sold them to him for 25 cents a piece.
Oh my God.
We cut the pintle tip off to make it a pencil jet. So you got to look at your injectors and see. Do you have injectors? But I think these are unmodified. Yeah, this still has the diffuser on the end. So this is what you want.
Okay. This one's flatter. Is that what
That's the modified one.
Okay. And that would create the jet?
Yeah, so it puts the injector stream into a pencil jet versus a fan spray.
Oh.
And what it does is the higher RPM you get, less time you have to get the fuel into the engine. So we just do a pencil jet, and we ran it up like 8 bar and just slam the fuel into the back of the inlet valve. When we did it with this one, with the standard one, we didn't have to put that much fuel pressure because it would diffuse it. But it wasn't as good at high RPM. Since you have the low mount injectors on all 4 of those engines, we want to use these ones.
Joel wanted to know what's in these boxes, and that's brand new.
Oh, wow.
Never used, waiting to be born. And so we got a couple blocks, but look at how light that is. That's pretty sick. This is the coolest thing ever. And we didn't disassemble mine to this point because I know better, and I know that I'm not smart enough to do this. But first thing you notice is an O-ring is holding the compression in. That blows my mind. But we have all the spare parts to fix like a block like this up. Now, what's really fascinating is this engine spins counterclockwise. And this right here is piston 1. Now, it's funny, all 4 pistons are currently sitting flat. The flat plane crank means that it's flat from one side, and then the other ones are all karate chopping like this. These 2 go at the same time. These 2 go at the same time. One is doing an exhaust stroke, one is doing a compression stroke. That is not dictated by the engine, it's dictated by the camshafts. So I actually took the camshafts and figured out which way they spin, which is the opposite of the motor. I come up to a firing order that did match what their firing order is online. So when you see the old Cosworths, they didn't change from that. It is a 1836. It's kind of cool. You can see the crosshatch on them, so that it does not look heavily worn. This is going to be our little baby for teaching us how to build these engines properly from the ground up.